Game week 4 is upon us in the Sky Bet Championship, and we've had some turbulent games over the course of the last few weeks. Well, now it's time to take a look and preview every single fixture in Game week 4. If you haven't already, go and hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned when all my latest Derby County and EFL Championship and League One videos drop. Obviously, check the description for the timestamp so that you can go and check whatever video you want to check across the course of this entire video. Obviously, it could be a long one, so make sure you check the description, go and watch them in whatever order you want. But shall we now get into it? So, game 1, we have Luton Town facing Queen's Park Rangers in what I think is going to be a really interesting game. Obviously, Luton Town haven't necessarily got off to the start that they intended to do under Rob Edwards. It's going to be really interesting to see how he turns it around. Obviously, they do have some players missing from injury, and they've also got a load of players who sort of left the club that were big features for them last season in the Premier League. Now, obviously, Queen's Park Rangers have had a massive turnaround over the course of the last 12 months. And obviously, Marty Cifuentes has done a really good job there. They've brought in Karamoko Dembele, who's been a really excellent signing at this point of the season so far. But obviously, they are still missing some players. We're not going to look into the table as per the other videos. I think it's still a little bit too early to really take anything from that. But as soon as we do, we'll make sure we get into that first. Obviously, if we want to look at the head-to-head of these two sides, it is 3 wins to Luton, 1 draw and 5 wins to QPR. The last time they played each other was back in 2022, where they played each other 3 times in that year, with Luton Town only losing 1 of them. So Luton Town have won the previous 2 games versus QPR, 3-1 at Kenilworth Road and then 3-0 at Loftus Road. So it's a really interesting game to look into. I certainly think there's going to be a lot to talk about with this one, because you look at the starts to the season of both sides and you see Luton Town have only picked up a point so far this season. Queen's Park Rangers have picked up 2, so they'll be quite near each other in the table, but certainly both sides haven't necessarily got off to the point of the winning ways that they wanted to get off to. Obviously, Luton Town I had as one of the favourites to go up. QPR I thought would sort of be in that upper mid-table, but obviously not showing that right now. Obviously, pressure could build on Rob Edwards as this season progresses, and Marty Cifuentes is certainly doing a good job at QPR right now. Obviously, you look at the incomings of Karamoko Dembele, who's had a massive impact so far. I do think you've got to look back at the Plymouth game and think they played against 10 men for about 60 minutes, and then obviously it went down to 9 just before the final whistle, and I think QPR would have wanted much more from that. Obviously, Luton Town's only point of the season came when they had 10 men, so it's going to be interesting to see how these two teams progress. Obviously, deadline day is it the 30th of this month, so we're only a few days away from that when you're watching this video. It's going to be really interesting to see how the teams do change over the course of that day, because a lot of things will happen. We've seen more transfers try and hit the market recently, so let's see what happens with the rest of the league in the transfer market. Game 2 is Burnley versus Blackburn Rovers at Turf Moor. Now, Burnley have had a massive turnover of players over the last few days as I'm recording this, and they look to be bringing in 3 more over the course of the next few days as well, if not more. Scott Parker made a stand with his Burnley squad and said, if you don't want to be here, I don't want to have to deal with you, I don't want to play here, and that is what he's done. Now, obviously, Burnley started really strong with that. I think it was a 4-1 win over Luton Town. You obviously had the win after that as well. They've had a really good start, but it came undone versus Sunderland, and Sunderland came away winners in that one. Blackburn Rovers, in my opinion, have done really well at the start of this season. Certainly the complete opposite of what I anticipated. Obviously, the ownership issues which were going off, and the Sammy Szmodic situation, and at the time of making my predictions, they hadn't really made many moves in the transfer market, and it appears the moves they are making now after letting Sammy Szmodic go are certainly helping them. Now, if we do look at the head-to-head of these two sides, they played each other back in 2022 and 2023. Burnley came out 3-0 winners at Turf Moor and 1-0 winners at Blackburn, which is obviously very interesting, but it's going to be interesting to see how that obviously goes into this one. Now, obviously, you look at all these injuries for Burnley now. Obviously, they're going to have an impact, but it's more interesting to see how they're going to develop this squad with the amount of talent that they've lost over the last few days. Now, obviously, if we look at the early season form for both sides, Blackburn haven't lost yet. The only points they've dropped is 2 to Norwich City. You look at Burnley, and they've only dropped the 3 points to Sunderland. So the early pace setters in the division are these two sides, as well as Sunderland. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this game goes. I think it could be an absolutely massive one for the neutral. I think we could see quite a lot of goals. Cardiff City, off the back of their late draw versus Swansea City, they host Middlesbrough this Saturday at 12:30. It's going to be really interesting to see how this one goes. Obviously, both sides suffering from a bit of injury damage to their team at the moment, but both teams will look to be making improvements in the end of the transfer market. And when you're looking at these two sides, I think you look at Middlesbrough and think they're going to be a playoff contender. You look at Cardiff and you think probably lower mid-table, and I do think it's a big discussion to be had with Middlesbrough when we go in to look at their form, that they need to sort of hit a level. And obviously the win against Leeds in the Cup was a massive win, but then to only pick up 1 point, both the new promoted sides, I think it really speaks to what they're missing. You obviously then look at Cardiff City. They've picked up the same amount of points of Middlesbrough, and I don't think they're going to be in the same conversation. Well, they haven't actually. They've only picked up 1 point. My bad, I misread the Cup game. But Cardiff have picked up a point. Middlesbrough have picked up 4. They're not really supposed to be in the same conversation. And obviously, this is why I'm not looking at the league table yet, because I don't think it says a great deal. Once we get to around 8 to 10 games in, we'll take a look at it. But you look at, obviously, Cardiff City have brought in Will Fish. Obviously, the likes of Keona Tete sitting on the injury table isn't good for them. And you look at the Middlesbrough side, and I think they've obviously got a long way to go, and I do think Carrick will get them playing some good football this season, but will it be too late to really make a push for automatic promotion? Obviously, there's 42 games left to go after this one, so 43 right now. It's going to be really interesting to see how they turn it around. Obviously, there's loads of points still up for grabs, and no one's season is over this early in the season. Coventry City host Norwich at the Coventry City Building Society Arena. Now, Coventry City are without Ben Sheaf and Rafael Rodriguez, and Norwich City are without Ashley Barnes. It's going to be an interesting one, this one. Two sides who I think are certainly going to be in that sort of playoff push. Will they be in the playoffs? I'm not entirely sure, but I certainly do think they're going to be in and around the playoff area. I think Coventry City have a really good manager in Mark Robbins. I think they've got a fairly decent squad as well. I think Norwich City just need to find their rhythm. I don't quite think they've found it yet. Now, if we do go on to look at the results so far this season, obviously, Coventry only picking up 4 points so far. Norwich only the 2. With a win against Stevenage. Obviously, Coventry beat Bristol in the Cup competitions. Now, I do think both of these sides have the capability of being really, really good this year. And I think you look at what Coventry City have done in the past, and obviously I think they're going to be in and around the same sort of area this year. Norwich City should certainly be up there as well. The big question is going to be, can they bring in the right additions towards the end of the window? Is there going to be more additions? After this weekend's fixtures, we'll do the preview. Then we're going to do a video looking through each team's transfers and what I think is going to be good business and what isn't. And these two sides are going to feature in that, because I think some players have left Norwich especially who have certainly lost them a little bit of quality. Obviously, that's happened everywhere across the league. When you look at the likes of Burnley, Leeds, etc., they've all lost important players, and it's obviously massive for those teams to sort of rebuild and bring in the right players to replace it. So I'm not 100% sure Norwich have done that yet. I think maybe Coventry need a little bit more. Obviously, you lot can let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Next up, we have Derby County versus Bristol City at Pride Park Stadium. Now, Derby County picked up a really, really good win against Middlesbrough and followed it up with a disappointing defeat to Watford. A game where, in my opinion, we lacked a bit of confidence. We didn't really want to keep the ball. We just sort of, it was either lump it long or kick it out. And it didn't really go to plan for Derby County. And obviously, the second goal from Sissoko took a big deflection to fall to him in the first place after a shot was blocked. And then it was just, both the goals for Watford were stoppable, and that's what caused me a problem. I'm not saying it was goalkeeper stoppable, but defensive wise. And obviously, if you want to go and check out my match review of that, that is already out. Go and check that out. I'll make sure to tag it in this video. Obviously, there will be a full match preview for Derby County vs Bristol City on Thursday, so make sure you stick around and turn that subscribe button on to see that one. Now, we go into this game, and obviously Derby County have a few injury worries. Corey Blackett-Taylor hasn't been mentioned for a while. I think Erin Cashin is going to be questionable for this one. Obviously, Paul Warne said he should be back after the Barrow game, which, as I'm recording this, is tonight. We're not going to talk about cup competitions because it doesn't really matter, but obviously, Erin Cashin's a big loss for Derby County, and hopefully he can get back in for Saturday. Obviously, Jake Rooney's out. Till when? Who knows? It says here April, but I'm sure it's been reported 3 or 4 months by Derby themselves. And obviously missing Kane Wilson as well. Now, Derby County have brought in a new player in Tawanda Chiwa, who has really high regards from Wolverhampton Wanderers, and it'll be interesting to see if he can provide a little bit of a better attacking spark for Derby County. Now, Bristol City have a few former Derby County players in the likes of Hayden Roberts, Max Bird and Jason Knight. 3 really, really good players in my opinion as well. I really think Derby County need Hayden Roberts right now, in complete honesty. Someone who can play on the left side of a back 3, can play at left back as well. He also has that capability of coming into midfield. So it's one of those where I think Bristol City have profited off Derby really over the last few seasons. Jason Knight now the captain there, putting some really, really good performances recently, and I'm a bit scared about this one as a Derby County fan. I think Jason Knight has been excellent for them recently. Max Bird as well has really picked up the level since joining the team. That is more of a possession style, and that's something which as a Derby County fan we haven't seen since Wayne Rooney and then Liam Rossignol left. So it's going to be interesting how this one goes. Obviously, if you look at the results so far, obviously Bristol City have picked up 5 points out of their 3 games. Derby County have only picked up 3. I think I've predicted that this game's going to be a bore draw, and I genuinely do believe that, because I think it's going to be a case of, I think Derby will shut down the likes of Max Bird and Jason Knight. We know how important they're going to be to this Bristol City side. Obviously, there's more than just Jason Knight and Max Bird on their team. You've got the likes of Sinclair Armstrong and things like that as well, who are going to impact the performance. And I do think Derby County have the capability of winning this game, but do I think it's likely? Probably not. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Leeds United host Hull City at Ellen Road in what I think is a massive fixture for Leeds United and Hull City for that matter. Obviously, Hull City haven't quite got off to the start that they probably wanted to, and the same can be said about Leeds United. Obviously, if we do go and look at that short injury list for Hull City, some important players maybe that are missing. I think Longman is a championship quality player, and certainly has had interest this summer. Not gone anywhere yet. Obviously, there is a possibility for that still. Now, obviously, if we look at the start to this season so far, Leeds United have only picked up 5 points, which they certainly will have wanted more, especially when facing one of the newly promoted sides. But I think they got a really good result in their previous game versus Sheffield Wednesday. That 2-0 win really sort of put a dampener on Danny Roll's start to the season with Sheffield Wednesday. They've now had 2 bad results in a row. But Leeds United have sort of picked up their 2nd clean sheet of the season. They've won a game. It's going to be really interesting to see how they sort of go on from here. Obviously, we are only 3 rounds in, so there is a lot still to go. Now, obviously, Hull City, they've only picked up 3 points in the division this year, losing in the Cup to Sheffield Wednesday. And I do think this is going to be a really interesting one, because I think if you look back to what's happened to Hull City this summer and Leeds United, they've both lost some of their big players, some of the players that are most important to them. So it's going to be really interesting to see how both teams handle that. Obviously, I think the transfer window closes on the 30th. So there's a lot that could happen. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Let me know if anybody signed in between me recording and now the video that you're seeing. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I think this one is going to be a really, really interesting one. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County and EFL Championship match day previews and reviews that I'm going to be doing over on the channel. Obviously the review for the last set of games will have came out on Monday, so make sure you go and check that out. The League One review will be out on Tuesday, so make sure you've checked out that video on my channel. Make sure you stay tuned and finish this one, and then obviously wait until the next one comes out. We're going to be doing loads of Championship and League One content across the course of this season, so make sure you don't miss out. Millwall host Sheffield Wednesday in what is going to be a really interesting game at the Den. Sheffield Wednesday coming to this off the back of two really disappointing results to Sunderland and then to Leeds United, and they certainly will be wanting to turn their form around. Obviously, after the opening day victory that they had against Plymouth, everyone was sort of talking about them as being sort of in that promotion conversation, but after the last two results, I don't quite think they are there yet. Now, Millwall, on the other hand, I'm not quite sure how to feel about Millwall, because they've only picked up 1 point this season. They can score goals, they can also concede goals, and this is where I think Sheffield Wednesday may get a little bit of joy, because Sheffield Wednesday showed on that opening day that gives them the opportunity and they will score. Now, they haven't scored in the last 2 games, but that's something which I'm sure Danny Roll will be hoping that he can turn around. Obviously, Neil Harris hasn't quite got off to the best start at Millwall this season. You look at the signings of Macaulay Langstaff, he's barely getting on the pitch. You look at the way they play as well, he doesn't really fit the system, so be interesting to see if they bring in any extra players, but I certainly think this game is going to be interesting. Obviously, looking at the previous fixtures, you've got the 3-2 defeat to Watford. Now, I think Watford are a very good side in this division. They'll certainly be in the top half come May, but I thought Millwall should be up there as well. And then obviously the 1-0 win at Portsmouth, I think that was in the cup competition. 4-3 loss to Bristol City, which I think shows that Bristol City are a bit open at the back and Millwall also open at the back. And then the 0-0 draw to Hull, which sort of gives them a little bit of a boost, but I'm not quite sure it's the sort of boost they want. They need to pick up their first win this season so that they can sort of step up to the next level. Now, you look at Sheffield Wednesday and it started amazingly. 4-0 over Plymouth Argyle, 2-1 over Hull City. Obviously, that was in the Cup. Then, obviously, the last 2 defeats, conceding 6 with no reply is very disappointing for Sheffield Wednesday. They were very poor versus Sunderland, and the Leeds United performance wasn't really much to go off. So it's one where I think both of these sides certainly have a long way to go if they want to be in that promotion picture. Oxford United host Preston North End at the Kassam Stadium, and I think this one's going to be really interesting. I think Oxford United have certainly come into this division with no fear. They're competing with everybody. They're going toe-to-toe, and I think in the last game, if I remember rightly, they conceded a lot of possession. And the thing with Des Buckingham is he's done that a lot against good opposition over the course of the last 12 months in post. Well, it's a little bit less than 12 months, but you know what I mean. And he's done a really good job at it. Now, I've said it time and time again that I personally don't believe that you can sit on 30% possession and go and win consistently. I just don't think it's capable, especially in this division where you're playing so many teams with such technical players and such ability to be able to pick you apart and find them passes and find them tiny spaces and make the difference. Now, obviously, Oxford United can sort of develop that over the course of the season. Obviously, getting the likes of Louis Sibley, Idris El Mazouni into the picture might help with that to give them more ball possession. But we'll have to see, obviously, how that progresses over the course of the season. Now, Preston North End coming to this one off the back of an excellent win versus Luton Town in Paul Heckingbottom's first game in charge. Now, I was really impressed with Heckingbottom at Sheffield United under the circumstances they were under. Now, obviously, the Premier League campaigns leave a bit to be desired, but in the Championship, with everything that was going off behind the scenes, and he's still going off behind the scenes for now, Chris Wilder, I think Heckingbottom did a really good job there. I'm really excited to see what he can do at Preston North End. Obviously, I know I've got a few Preston fans who have commented on some previous videos, so let me know your thoughts on the appointment down in the comment section. But I think it's an excellent start for an excellent manager, and hopefully he can take you to the next level, because I do think you have some players who are certainly capable of pushing you up the league. Obviously, I know budget-wise, you're not necessarily in the picture for top 6 budget or anything like that, but if you can sort of overperform as you have done in previous years under Ryan Lowe, which obviously got a bit stale towards the end, then I certainly think Heckingbottom will have done a good job. Certainly a good manager. It'll be interesting to see how long he lasts at Preston if it does go well, because obviously a good performing team can obviously bring up those offers for the Premier League and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that one. Now, if we do look at the other previous fixtures for these two sides, obviously Preston have picked up 2 wins this season, one in the Cup, a 1-0 win over Luton Town, and then obviously the 2 losses to Swansea City and Sheffield United to start the campaign. Obviously in the league, they've had 3 different managers in 3 different games, so I'm trying not to really take much notice of their results right now because they're still learning and developing under now Heckingbottom, who is now in charge, and it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. Now, Oxford United started excellently with that 2-0 win over Norwich City. Obviously then the 2-0 win in the Cup over Peterborough United. The 3-2 defeat to Coventry was very, very unlucky. It was another game where sat in, sort of let Coventry have the ball, and it caused their own problems in the end, and they conceded really, really late on. I think it was a penalty, if I remember rightly, and ended up losing that game 3-2. In the Blackburn game, it was sort of similar, and Blackburn found a way to pick them off and scored their 2 goals. Oxford did score an absolute screamer, but it doesn't matter if you don't win. So for me, it's going to be very interesting to see how this game goes. Obviously, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Plymouth Argyle host Stoke City, and they've got 2 red cards and 2 suspensions to compete with. Adam Forshaw got sent off after 29 minutes, and Freddie Isaka got sent off right at the end of the game. I think it was 90+1 or something like that. And I do think it was a bit of a harsh red for Isaka. I'm not quite sure I'd have given a red for it personally, but it's one of those. Now, obviously, you look at Stoke City, they have some players on the injury list by the likes of Ben Pearson, Ender Stevens, Michael Rose and Sam Gallagher. Some very, very key players at this level who can have a massive impact. Now, I think Stoke City are sort of hoping to sort of turn a corner this season under Steven Schumacher, but in recent games they haven't quite been able to do that. Obviously the 2-1 loss to West Brom, I think West Brom are going to be a really, really good side this year. I think Carlos Corberán's an amazing manager, and Stoke just couldn't quite get the better of them and couldn't even steal a point. Now obviously the Watford game, they got battered 3-0. Now I think that Watford are certainly going to be up there this year. I don't think Stoke are, but I think Watford are, and Watford are a very, very good side. I watched them at the weekend against Derby County. I don't know if we made them look better than they are, but obviously the 3-0 win over Stoke City sort of shows that they're quite a good side, and that's something which Stoke City are going to have to look to develop over the course of this season. Obviously their only 2 wins have come against Carlisle United away from home and Coventry City at home on the opening day, so it's going to be interesting to see how that develops, because they certainly obviously are going to need better results than that. And I do think they'll turn it around. Obviously, it's only early season. There's a long way still to go this year. Now, if we're talking about Plymouth Argyle, they started off on the worst possible footing, picking up 2 points in the last 2 games. I think Wayne Rooney and the coaching staff will be delighted with 2 points from Hull and QPR. I think in the QPR game, especially considering that they had 10 men for the best part of 60 minutes. The Hull game, I think Hull scored late on to equalise that one. So it's going to be interesting to see how they progress. Obviously, Morgan Whittaker picking up his first goal of the season at the weekend. Is he going to be able to hit the numbers he hit last season? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Portsmouth then host Sunderland at Fratton Park. I'm not quite sure how to feel about Pompey. I think they've done some really good performances so far this year. I don't quite think they've always got the results to match. Obviously, the Leeds game, I think, was a really, really good performance. Don't get me wrong, I think Leeds were the better team, but I think Pompey deserved the win, especially with some of the goals they scored that day. You've obviously got some players on the injury table, which will obviously help them. They're looking into some new signings as well. I believe they've not long bought someone in from Borussia Dortmund, which could turn out to be an excellent signing. Obviously, if we do look at the recent results of Pompey, they've picked up 3 points in the league, and I don't think they're going to be disappointed with that, but I think they're probably going to think they could have more. You look at the Middlesbrough game, they went 1-0 up, then 2-1 up, and they probably will think that they should have saw it out. The Luton game, obviously, I think if I'm a Pompey fan, I'd be disappointed with that Luton draw. Luton were down for 10 men for a large portion of the game, and I think as much as Luton are a difficult opposition, they're there for the taking at the moment, and they weren't able to pick up more than a point. Now, a point is excellent on natural scheme of things versus Luton, in my opinion, for Pompey, but under the circumstances of the red card, I don't necessarily think so. And I've already mentioned the Leeds United game, where I think Pompey deserved all 3 points. Now, if we do look at Sunderland, and I think they're just going to fly this year. They're really developing a really good young squad. They've brought in some more experienced heads to help out with that as well. And obviously, yes, Neil's missing this game through suspension, but if you look at their recent results, 2-0 versus Coventry, 4-0 against Sheffield Wednesday and 1-0 against Burnley, I think they've had a really good start. Obviously, the 2-0 defeat to Preston in the cup competitions wasn't sort of what they wanted, but I don't really regard the cup competitions massively. I think a lot of teams play different players, different systems, things like that, to sort of be able to develop their talent and sort of aid fitness, especially in the early rounds. So I think Sunderland is certainly one to look out for this season, and I think like their performances so far have been magnificent, and it wouldn't surprise me if this game ended 4 or 5-0 to Sunderland. So obviously let me know your thoughts down in the comments, but I certainly think that Sunderland should have the edge in this one. Obviously Pompey have a few players that they're missing with injury, and it's certainly one where they can be a better side than they are, and they're bringing in better players, and I do think that they'll have a really good points tally come the end of the season, but they just need to find that first win of the Championship campaign. West Brom host Swansea City at the Hawthorns in a game which I think isn't going to be as close as some people might predict. I think West Bromwich Albion don't necessarily have the greatest squad in the division, but they certainly have, in my opinion, one of the best Championship managers in the division this season. I really like Carlos Corberán. I think he's a really good manager, and if you look at the recent results, they've picked up 7 points from the opening 3 games of the division. Obviously the 2-1 loss to Fleetwood isn't what you want, but obviously, as I've said in previous teams and previous reviews and previews, that those cup competitions don't really mean a lot to me. You make a lot of changes in those games, and whether you win or lose, I do think sometimes it has an impact on the squad, but I don't think it's that big when it's not your main 11 playing. So obviously they've picked up 6 points off Queen's Park Rangers and Stoke City. QPR, who I think are certainly going to be up there with Marty Cifuentes this year. Obviously Steven Schumacher is doing his job at Stoke. Is he doing it to the level that they probably want him to? Maybe not. Maybe they want a little bit more, but I do think they're a really good selection of points to pick up. Getting a point off Leeds as well is excellent. So it's one of those for me where I do think that West Brom are certainly going to take this division to new levels for themselves this year. I think they certainly could be within that playoff picture. And when you look at Swansea City, obviously they've picked up 4 points so far in this campaign with a 3-1 win over Gillingham in the Cup, 3-0 over Preston North End, and the 1-1 draw in the derby against Cardiff City. I think obviously that opening day defeat to Middlesbrough isn't necessarily what they want, but when you think about where Middlesbrough may end the season compared to Swansea, I think it won't look that bad. Now, I do think both of these sides have a lot to prove. I think Swansea City have made a lot of changes over recent years, and they've not quite hit the same level that they were once at. But they've obviously got a lot to do over the course of this transfer window and things like that. They've let a few players go and obviously brought a fair chunk of players in. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes over the course of not just this game, but the course of the season. West Brom as well have made some really smart signings. I like the signing of Lewis Dobbin. I think he is a good player. I think they just need to find a way to get it out of him. And when he was at Derby County, the big problem that we had with Lewis Dobbin was his clinicalness. He got into really good areas and just always made the wrong decision. So obviously he's a little bit older than now. He's spent a little bit of time at Everton with higher quality players. It'll be interesting to see how that one develops for Lewis Dobbin at West Brom. I think West Brom are going to win this game though. I think it's not really in doubt for me, but it's going to be interesting to see how this game does play out. And the final game of the weekend on Sunday afternoon is Sheffield United against Watford. And what a really important game this could be. I think Sheffield United and Watford are two teams who are going to want to be in there towards the back end of this season. They're going to want to be in the promotion portion. I do think both teams will be in and around it. How in it they are is going to be the different question. So it's one of those for me. Obviously, Sheffield United, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them on deadline day. Obviously, there's interest in Ollie Arblaster for a transfer. There's interest in Gustavo Hamer from Leeds. So it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses and if they are able to replace any players who do leave. Now, I think Chris Wilder will find a formula in this division and find something that does work, where they can win games and sort of be very competitive in this division. Obviously, Watford as well under Tom Cleverley have been excellent so far. So it's really interesting to see how these two teams are going to compete in this game, especially at Bramall Lane, where Sheffield United will make it tough for Watford. I'm very interested in this game because if we look at the previous results, Watford are yet to drop a single game so far this season. Sheffield United have picked up 5 points over their 3 league games and the 4-2 win over Wrexham. They have conceded goals, Sheffield United, 3 in their last 2. Well, it's what, 5 in the last 3 games. Which obviously isn't great for them, but they'll certainly be hoping to build on that as the season progresses and sort of drop the goals they're conceding and maybe begin to score a few more. Now, you look at Watford, they've conceded 3 in their 4 games, but they've scored in abundance with, what, 10, 13 goals over those 4 games, So it's going to be really interesting to see how this game does go. I think Watford are a really good side. I've not seen Sheffield United much this season. It's going to be really interesting to see how this one plays out. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Now, we've got through that entire championship round. Obviously, there is going to be transfers and things that go on in between me recording this video and before these games are played. So make sure you keep all up to date with them. Let me know any of the latest transfers and gossip in the comments section. I'm really interested to see what you guys know about your clubs and things like that. Who could be coming in, who could be going. Make sure you let me know. While you're at it, hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. And I'll catch you in my next video. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.